Here is a resource for students to create a podcast, and you're able to come in here and customize this template to change your topic. So, for my topic, I had my students focus or reflect on the life of middle school. So, they were going on to junior high and they were reflecting on their sixth grade year and giving kind of like a reflection of what kind of took place, what events they learned from, how they grew, any obstacles that they might have overcome. Or the other choice that they could have picked is the big transition, where they were more so giving advice for upcoming students into these grade levels. And so here was kind of the roadmap for the students. The goal was for them to create a 5 to 6 minute podcast episode. And if students didn't know what a podcast episode was, we kind of talked about that first. So I had some students in a previous grade create this podcast right here, PLSD Middle School Chats. And students just kind of saw real quickly what a podcast is. We talked about how you have to be very descriptive in the words that you use because your audience can't see what is happening. And so we, again, kind of talked about how to create a podcast, what it is, and all of those kind of just to help them understand what a podcast was, and then showing them that the goal was a 5 to 6 minute podcast. Once students did the goal, they then went on to topic 2, where they got to pick which topic they wanted to choose. And students just grabbed the markup tool and they just highlighted which activity they wanted to focus on for their podcast. Then they went on to step number 3 and they planned their podcast. So students came here and they started to think about what they wanted to kind of research and plan for their podcast. So they had to pick their name and their episode. They had to think about their format. They had to think about their call to action. And then they had to kind of think about, okay, what is my outline or script going to look like? After students started to plan, they then wrote their show notes. So then they wrote their title here. They came up with the main message, their favorite memory, obstacles, call to action, and so on. And students were able to either use the drawing tool. Students could come in and they were able to use the comment tool where they could add text comments, voice comments, video comments. They could use the text box. So they had multiple different ways to get their ideas out on paper for them to create. Then what students did is they recorded their podcast. So you could either use WeVideo or in Cami. Students could just use the voice comment and begin to record their audio. So once students did that, they had their audio file ready to go. And if you right click, so 2 fingers, 1 click, you can save this audio file to your computer, and then students could add this into an editing software. If you wanted them to add music or add additional pieces, they're able to do that as well. And then after that, students then went in and they had to edit, and submit their podcasts. So when they were editing, it was just kind of like, did you intro? Do you have outros, sound effects? Give it any kind of stories? Is there anything that we can kind of do to make this more interesting? Do you need interesting facts or any of those type of activities just to make their podcast pop? So this was more of an extension for those students that might have finished a little faster than others for them to really kind of think about. And then after they were all finished, they then submitted their podcast. So here I just had a Google form where students put their name, the podcast URL, and then on the Google Sheet, we listened to each other's podcast and gave peer feedback. So this could be, again, a fun activity for you to do with your students if you want your students to create. The students really liked having the roadmap to kind of support them along the way, and they knew exactly what they were to do each step along the way.